a greater disease. Somebody go to Proverbs 16:18. Now remember, this is the simple.
16:18. I got the Old Testament.
Well, I've heard the New Testament.
Excuse me, I didn't mean like that. In the version that nobody likes, they can't understand the thousands to do this and all that kind of stuff. So whatever. You know, I'll go find later.
Read that Old Testament for us.
Bring on.
It's not Proverbs 1, it's Proverbs 2.
Pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall.
Okay, so what two things did he mention right there?
Pride.
Pride and a haughty spirit. In other words, you can have pride, and your pride goes before destruction. So as a perfect example, you can be very prideful. But we're talking about two different things. We're talking about pride goeth before the fall. In other words, pride, basically the analogy of pride goeth before the fall is pride is leading you around. It's got you on a leash and it's taking you for a walk where it wants to go. And so your pride has set you up to where you are this. You are this, and you are entitled to this. And you start looking at pride, and you start looking at yourself. Pride is the self, the sin of self. Why would pride be the sin of self? Because it is the exact opposite of a humble spirit, which is selfless. Every major field that you get into any kind of spiritual studies that are godly centered, then I can tell you how you can tell the difference. That are godly centered, they are always the denial of self. Anything that is antagonistic to the denial of self is the opposite. In other words, again, the satanic, what their main saying is, do what thou wilt is the sum of all laws. In other words, do what you want to do. Because I can be anything I want to do. You consider the repercussions of this. When you say, I identify as this, you have placed your own identification above that of which God created you as. In other words, you're saying that you can recreate yourself, your world, all of these things. Pride goeth before destruction. So if pride enters in, and if pride is a symptom, what does that lead you to? The haughty spirit. Not haughty spirit like lambs. Because, you know, that's like, that's not but it's that pride is what goes before, pride is what leads us before the fall. The fall is the haughty spirit. That's when you start lifting yourself up, and that pride is now becoming your actions. We are going through a thing right now at my work. And the problem with pride is that pride, it attacks, and especially if you're in leadership, it attacks everyone around you. And this man's world is centered in pride. And David is destroyed. He cannot be wrong. He has set himself up as he says, I am not a religious man, I am a spiritual person. What that says is that when you're saying that you're a spiritual person, you do not recognize an absolute deity. In other words, you do not recognize someone as above you. You have that haughty spirit. In other words, yourself is driven by pride. Everything that you do, when you walk into a room, all your actions, when you refuse to be humble, you're driven by, I am right.
You see it every year in the destruction of football players. Better than their team.
Yeah.
I am the team, and then the next thing you know it, there's no job walking the dog individuals. You know?
But what's really funny is when you consider this thing, if temptation is again this thing, you start considering yourself. We're going to talk about that in a second, but it talks about take heed and lift. If you think you're strong, if you think you can handle this, I remember Randy and I one time, we was talking about, because all of our church, and it was really funny because we're going this direction, you know, so I'm thinking about this thing, but Randy and I was talking about how to move in closer to God. So if you ask yourself how to draw closer to God, you're really asking yourself what? When Eve was tempted, what was she tempted by? What were the phrase? What was the repercussion? In other words, what was the thing? And I'll give you the word.
Did God really say that?
Now, I'll go there.
Did I die?
No. Give me a second.
I got a question on that.
Yeah, so I'm going to get there. I hadn't even planned on going here, but I'm going to go here. Think about this thing. How was Eve, what tempted Eve? Think about what really caused her. I'm getting there. About me. Okay, I'm going to go there. Somebody go to Genesis 3:5.
For God know that in the day you eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, you shall be as gods, knowing good and evil.
So, Eve was tempted by her desires to be like God. That her eyes was open. We want to know God's ways. We want to know. We all think we really want to know God's ways. I remember a friend of mine. This is what a friend of mine did. We were standing there talking to a banker and all this stuff, and he says, Monty, he says, I really pray that God would reveal to me the real depth of my spiritual condition. Because he considered himself strong. In reality, we all are seeking for the praise or the recognition of God. Why? Because we didn't receive that on earth or from people around. We don't receive what we think we are doing. That is the number one problem with people in relationships. We don't receive what we think that we are due. Maybe if we really would look at our relationship and we're thinking that we're not receiving what we're due, or in other words, what is owed us, maybe in reality we are truly receiving what is owed to us. If you're in a crappy relationship and you're receiving the crappy relationship, guess what?
Maybe you're crazy.
Maybe that's some repercussions of it. So, again, when we're looking at these things of wanting to be like God, and this guy says, God, show me. And so Lance, what he did, he went to sleep and he had a dream. And he says, look at this line. And he says, he looked back at this line and he says, man, he says, these are all the people that you've touched in your life. He says, now look, the other line. And the line was immeasurable. And as he looked at the line, he says, these are the ones that you either failed, or you rejected that I've sent you, or your spirit was as such that they couldn't talk to you because you was above them. And he says, your righteousness is as filthy rags. Do y'all know what filthy rags he's talking about?
Yeah.
Menstrual cloths.
Right.
That's what he's talking about. It's the discharge. You are unclean. And the man realized at that moment that he was so unclean. And his life was never the same. When you start seeking for enlightenment, the problem with seeking enlightenment is enlightenment leads you to this point that you start thinking that you are above. I received this. One time when Randy and I were up here and we was talking about it, and I was telling him about how my transformation and my changes. And we entered into this thing of doing a thing. And how I entered into it, because I wanted to be a preacher, man. That's what I wanted to be. I really didn't want to be a preacher. I'll be honest with you. I didn't want to be a pastor. I didn't want to deal with people. I wanted to be an evangelist. Because evangelists are cool. They ride up in there, man. They pour this crap out, and bam, they're out of here. That's like walking in your kid's house going back, bam, 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 out of here. The pastor has to get in there and clean your house up with you. and deal with it while you're cleaning your house up and be there. I didn't want to deal with people, Karen. I don't want to be that evangelist. I want to go up there and tear your guts out and let you deal with God. Because I got cool. I'm happy now. We got a good altar call everybody with Daddy. Yeah, look at other people dealing with their problems. Yeah, because you brought them all to service. The thing is that oftentimes if you don't deal with a person, they brought down there, they're dealing with emotions, and after their emotions, who's going to be there for them? Who's going to guide them? Who's going to talk to them? Because there's nothing worse than when you clean your house out and you don't know what to put back in your house, and the next thing you know, he says it comes back in, and as soon as they bring their friends back.
7 more.
Yeah, because again, you've not been taught how to put stuff back in there. And so, this guy was telling me the story about as this evangelist. He said he would always really as a noteworthy evangelist, and he was talking about how he would pray and he would fast for every service. What do you think I did? Pray and fast for every service that I would go. I remember the last time we did it was going to Alabama, and I fasted that whole time going to Alabama. If you remember my time and how I used to fast. One day, Zeke, I fasted and I got up there and I got ready to preach. Guess what I had? Oh my God, I followed the transcript. I followed the recipe, how to be godly. And he says, it don't work that way. I moved. In other words, you're doing these things thinking that you can follow these procedures. That's what religion is. Religion is thinking you can follow procedures and rules and guidelines, and this will be your result. It's the whole theology of tithing. That if you tithe, God's going to do this. Well, if you tithing thinking that God is going to do this, then you're totally screwed up because that's not the point of tithing. You don't tithe expecting God to give you. You don't. Now the problem. That's even the problem with love. You don't love, but we want to love, expecting to be loved back. But the reality, Dory, sometimes we love and are not loved back. But that is the greatest sign of love: to be able to love and not be loved back, isn't it not? That's what the Bible says. So I had done that. And I remember I talked to Randy about this thing, and I said, I used to do it. The problem is that be ready to be revealed. And he said, yeah, man. He said, I did that once. He said, I'm going to never, ever do it again.
You got revealed something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it totally screwed him up. Pride is this. Now, this is something I'm going to mess your mind up. Because if temptation is a symptom, somebody read. Now, remember, again, it's not what we're reading, is what is revealed. I'm going to sidetrack here on this because during the week I am learning. There were several things that I heard as I'm driving and as I'm praying. I hear these words, I hear phrases, and I know I'm supposed to write them down. Guess what I don't do? I don't write them down. Guess where I'm at today? I don't have a clue where we're at. When we're doing these Bible studies, it's like I've talked to some of y'all, and you're like, well, that question. Well, I know I'm supposed to study that. And I know that caught my attention for a reason. Well, if you knew it caught your attention for a reason, that's God trying to talk to you. He's trying to show you. If you don't study it, then if you're still where you're at, where you were, then you've not done anything. You're not grown. You're just existing. And Dory, a plant that does not grow, how long is it going to stay in your garden? If it does not bear fruit, if it does not have a flower, it just sits there, what are you going to do?
Pull up and burn.
It's got to go. It's doing nothing that I want it to do. That's biblical. So, let me read that.
So if you think you're standing firm, be careful that you don't fall. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful, who will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. Therefore, my friends, flee from idolatry.
So, ask yourself this question. Would y'all not say that this is the most inaccurately quoted Bible verse in existence right here? How many people and how many times have you heard, Amber, God will not put more on you than what you can handle? How many times y'all heard that?
Oh, I heard it, but I don't think it's biblical.
It's not. What did he just say? Read it again, Kyle.
Sorry, and I on this app has this. It says, he will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear, but when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out.
So, He said, He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear, but when you